Community has launched the campaign to try and counter the extremists.
Now speaking out to denounce terror and extremism.
30,000 people formed a human chain in the south this afternoon in the name of peace.
We're asking if religious intolerance is on the rise.
We believe that religious freedom is a fundamental human right.
Giving a message that Islam is a religion of peace.
We must all endeavor to spread love and a sense of community.
In the name of God, the gracious and merciful, welcome to this press point. And today we're looking at issues of Islam within Europe. Two particular issues which we want to focus on today. The first is the rise of Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD party within Germany. And we want to discuss issues of potential Islamophobia and divisiveness within German society concerning Islam. The second point, which affects all of Europe particularly, but also the wider world as well, is the issues of the burka, the niqab, and how European democratic societies are responding to it, with a number of them banning the burka in Europe. These are the two issues today. I'm joined by my very dear friend, dear brother, Farooq Mahmood. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum, gentlemen, first of all, and ladies. Alhamdulillah, we are here again on the show. Today we're discussing the problem of xenophobia within Europe. And of course, as my brother Jonathan's mentioned a few moments back, that in Germany a new party has emerged called AfD, or Alternative for Deutschland party, which in fact has a very clear manifesto, which is simply Islamophobia. What do you think the future of Europe looks like this? Looking at the history of Europe, for example, just before the Second World War, and the xenophobia, the history of this one continent hasn't been to be very proud of. Do you think we have to be more careful? A continent with about 19 million Muslims living on this. And again, also at the same time, in Germany, 4 million Muslims reside. The US has 3.3 million Muslims. And clearly, we're talking millions of people here. Do you think this kind of attitude, allowing these parties to emerge, is something to be worried about or something to be concerned about? Send us your emails to presspoint@mta.tv or send us your tweets using the hashtag presspointmta. Jonathan.
Yes, and Farooq, we are joined in the studio by by Khalil Yusuf, the Deputy Director for Communications for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide. Welcome to the show, Brother Khalil.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. We are also joined, Farooq, on by phone from the USA with Haris Zafar, who is the spokesman for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the USA. And we're also joined by the head of the youth organization in Germany of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And we want to speak with him directly about some of the issues that we raised concerning German politics and society, and we'll come to them shortly. So, Brother Farooq, what have you found online in terms of some of the issues that have been going on?
To start things off, only two stories maybe, and then again we'll discuss more things afterwards. First of all, we have a story on independent newspaper which says anti-Islam party wants burqa ban in Germany, talking about members of the anti-immigration party, Alternative for Germany or Alternative for Deutschland, backed an election manifesto that says Islam is not compatible with the constitution and calls for a ban on minarets and the burqa. Burqa means the dress that ladies in Islam normally tend to wear on top of their other clothing. Also, other story, which is a week after that, on Telegraph, which says Germany's far-right AfD party has more public support than ever. That's more worrying, to be honest. And going down with one of the researchers that published is that only 22% of Germans believe Islam belongs in their country, according to the poll by Bild newspaper by the INSA Institute. And then it says an overwhelming 61% agreed that Islam does not belong in Germany, a central plank of the AfD's new manifesto. Brother Khalil Yusuf, assalamu alaikum. In light of all this, should we be concerned about this kind of attitude of some people in Germany, something to be concerned about, or is it a phenomenon which will just disappear with time?
I think it is something to be concerned about. It's very unfortunate that those with extremist tendencies, those that have a really hateful narrative, get much more media coverage than the millions of Muslims in Europe and across the world that provide the real, true practice of Islam, which is peaceful and which encourages societal harmony. And the reality is that if you allow a few people to peddle Islamophobia, then what that does is that creates harm not just for those people who subscribe to a peaceful message of Islam, but also those that are less educated, those that are not so well socially integrated, who then view these as methods of justifying more hateful behaviour towards those outside of Islam. And of course, it's a great recruiting tool, isn't it, for terrorists to be able to say, well, you have so many people that are now against you, come and fight for us in this awful cause.
But you know, Khalil, they have some very strong views about this. And so we've got an AfD politician from Saxony-Anhalt, Hans Thomas Till Schneider, who stated at the recent conference, which was in the beginning of May, he said, Islam is foreign to us, and for that reason it cannot invoke the principle of religious freedom to the same degree as Christianity. He went on to say that Islam is not part of Germany. And he also, and also it's worth noting that it has members in half of Germany's 16 regional state assemblies. And a recent Berlin state prosecutor is also an AfD member. So it seems that it's not just an isolated fringe, but it's becoming part of Germany's political dialogue, and it's winning votes. And they feel Islam is simply foreign to Germany. What do you think?
Well, it clearly isn't foreign to Germany because there are 4 million Muslims in Germany. So clearly it isn't foreign to Germany. Germany has had Muslims for decades now, and they have provided a really positive contribution. I'm sure we're going to hear from the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association in Germany, who'll be able to tell you lots of the great things that have been happening in Germany and the great things that the Muslims have been doing to contribute towards peaceful society. But the truth is that this idea that Islam is somehow incompatible with peace, incompatible with a society that works, incompatible with freedom of religion is absolutely untrue. The Holy Quran is very clear that there shall be no compulsion in religion. It guarantees freedom of religion, and even a cursory look at the history of Islam at the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of God be upon him, will show that even the Christians of Najran were allowed to worship inside a mosque by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad provided protection to Christians for their churches and also their right of worship. So the idea that Muslims or Islam is incompatible with freedom of religion or incompatible with a well-functioning society is completely untrue, and Islamic teachings are testament to that.
So you would feel it's directly it's based on a misunderstanding of Islam, is what you tell us. But let's go to Germany now, Brother Farooq. Let's call the president of the youth organisation and let's ask him first of all what's going on in Germany. So are you with us there from Germany? Can you hear us on the show?
Assalamu alaikum, I'm hearing you.
Wa alaikum salam. So welcome to the show. So as you've heard, we've started off talking about Germany, and we have quite a few questions about Germany. We also want to hear a bit about the USA and the politics there as well. But can you give us an update on who the AfD are and what they stand for?
Well, in the last few years, there were many tendencies, many anti-Islam tendencies in Germany. And the AfD stands for Alternative for Germany. They have tried to fill this space which has been occurred on the right-wing side of the conservative parties, where there is much potential to get votes of German people who either have lack of knowledge in respect of Islam or are fed up with prejudices on the Islam. So the AfD is trying to get many influence in Germany, and in a way of talking, they are very successful, because in many federal states of Germany they have been successful in finding votes and getting seats in the various parliaments. The essence or the problem which has been arised is that people are fearing Muslims and Islam. First of all, because they don't have much knowledge about Islam and about Muslims. And we can see this in a very specific way in the eastern part of Germany, where there is a lack of Muslims and there are not many Muslims living in East Germany. And it's kind of proof that this rise of this party is a bit of is a part of this phenomena that there is lack of knowledge, because there in East Germany there are not much Muslims, there is not much contact between the people with Muslims, and so naturally they are getting feared from Muslims.
Mr. Ahmed, I'm just going to stop you there because we have some views from Germany on the streets. So we're going to hear them and then come back and ask you a few more questions, as well as some of the other guests. So if you hold with us, we'll be back.
Yes.
Das allgemeine Bild?
Ja, die betrachten sich den von hinten und von vorne. Und der Islam zeigt sich ja jeden Tag in einer neuen Form. Ja, und das denke ich, dass die Menschen in Deutschland kritisch damit umgehen, dass die Menschen sich darüber Gedanken machen, betrachten ihn nicht nur von vorne und von hinten, sondern auch von oben und von unten.
Ja, es kommt darauf an, mit wem sie zu tun haben. Wenn sie mit Leuten, die keine Bildung haben oder die keine Information haben, dann haben die falsche Ideen, was der Islam ist.
Menschen, die eine Bildung haben oder
die informiert sind, können das differenziert betrachten.
Ja, momentan haben, glaube ich, viele so eine negative Einstellung darüber, was aber, glaube ich, falsch ist, weil man es nicht so verallgemeinern sollte. Ja.
Warum nicht?
Ja, weil man es nicht machen sollte. Nur weil also es gibt überall, egal wo, gibt es immer böse und schlechte Menschen. Deswegen.
Eher negativ, denke ich.
Ist das Ihrer Meinung nach gerecht?
Zum Teil nicht. Ja, das gibt positive, negative Aspekte.
Was sind die positiven Sachen und die negativen, die Sie eben erwähnten? Als Beispiel nur.
Positive Sachen, soweit sie nicht auffallen, unangenehm, und negativ natürlich alles, was mit Islamismus und so weiter zusammenhängt, ja.
Die überwiegende Meinung, wie ist die so im Land?
Ich glaube, dass momentan einfach die es negativ sehen, lauter sind. Ich glaube, die meisten haben überhaupt kein Problem damit.
Ist das gerecht?
Nein, natürlich nicht. Das ist total falsch, das ist totaler Blödsinn. Auch diese Argumentation, der Islam, beziehungsweise der Islam gehöre nicht zu Deutschland, ist ja einfach inzwischen nicht mehr zeitgemäß. Natürlich ist es nicht so, dass irgendwie vor 2000 Jahren, auch Deutschland ist vor 2000 Jahren niemand Christ gewesen, aber naja, ist Blödsinn.
Ich weiß nicht, ich denke, es ist auch so eine gewisse Offenheit, mit der die Menschen einfach auch auf andere zugehen sollten. Und ich meine, klar, auch wenn jemand anders aussieht oder so, einfach drauf zugehen, einfach reden. Ich meine, ich engagiere mich zum Beispiel auch für Flüchtlinge und sowas. Ich spiele mit denen Theater, und wenn ich auf die zugehe, einfach ganz normal mit denen spreche, dann kommt man sofort ins Gespräch und dann merkt man auch, da gibt es eigentlich gar nicht so viele Unterschiede, wie man glaubt.
Das müsste man eigentlich bei der Bildungsarbeit anfangen, in den Schulen früh eine offene Toleranz oder vielleicht auch neugierig aufeinander machen.
Vielleicht sich damit befassen und weil, naja, Christen sind ja auch eigentlich dasselbe und zum Schluss sind ja alles dasselbe Buch, auch die Bibel und alles und der Koran, ist immer dasselbe. Ja.
Denkst du, dass der Islam zur westlichen Welt passt? Letzte Frage.
Ich würde sagen, ja. Also es ist ja auch nur Menschen wie wir alle und ja auch die Religionen wie Christen, Buddhismus, ja, also wird es passen.
Gibt es wohl keine Patentrezepte. Es wäre natürlich hilfreich, wenn es alle Tendenzen, die mit Islamismus zu tun haben, nicht existieren würden. Also terroristische Aspekte und so weiter und so fort. Ja, alles, was mit islamischem Staat und so weiter zusammenhängt. Na, wenn das, sagen wir, eliminiert werden könnte, dann wäre der Gesamteindruck sicher positiver.
Mehr Aufklärung es geben sollte, wie zum Beispiel, ich bin auch zum Beispiel gegen christlichen Religionsunterricht an Schulen. Stattdessen sollte man eher so einen Mischmasch machen, sodass man eben alle Religionen mal kennenlernt und das dadurch auch besser verstehen kann.
Assalamu alaikum, Asnad Saab. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
So just a quick question. Of course, now people are concerned literally about Islam in that country, in Germany. Some people are saying it certainly is through the media how it portrays things. Coming back to the AfD party, do you think the concerns are real? Also, them winning, of course, the election recently in March 2016 of your provincial assemblies or parliaments, do Do you think that's because of the policies by Angela Merkel being in favor of immigration, or was it something else?
Well, I think there are many political reasons for that. I think the main reason is that Muslims should come forward and have a voice, and should try to work in that way that people are getting more knowledge and more contact with Islam. I would not say that it's the policy of the federal or the national government of Germany which has been able to produce the AfD, because these tendencies were even there before this government started to work. But of course, it's also one of the consequences of some statements of the Chancellor. She has said that Islam is part of Germany, and this gives naturally the potential for these right-wing parties or extremist parties to get in contact with people who have fear with such statements, and who can then fight for their votes. Of course, in a way, it's a consequence, but it's not because of the policies which are being made by the government.
Hasnat, in terms of looking at Germany, Germany is famous across Europe for its open door policy towards refugees, and it has been, especially over recent years with the Mediterranean crisis, and maybe other than Sweden, it's almost it's at the forefront of that approach. But then you had the Cologne attacks in the beginning of the year. And the Cologne attacks were when there was allegedly, there were hundreds, if not 1,000 or so, alleged assaults taking place in Cologne and in other cities on New Year's Eve. And from the news reports, it was suggested that a very high proportion were committed by either refugees or migrants, particularly from Algeria and Morocco. So to what extent is the rise of the AfD connected to the Cologne attacks?
I would not only highlight the Cologne attacks. I would say that the refugee crisis, all in all, is one phenomenon which has correlations with the rise of AfD. It's not one incident or two incidents. It's the whole refugee crisis, all in all, which is being correlated with that. But I think a point which is very necessary to point out is that there are many Muslims, millions of Muslims, who have been in the last years a very loyal part of the German society, and there is no doubt that there are many people who are willingly fighting literally for the country, either being part of the German armed forces and being loyal to the German state in that way, or upholding the law of Germany, or they are a very crucial and interesting part of the German society. There are many scientists who are contributing to the developments in the country, and so on and so forth. There are many Muslims who are a very lively and a very important part of German society, and these Muslims then, when such attacks or such incidents happen, of course the people and these parties like to just hide these realities and to get many of the votes which can be.
Let's start, sir. A quick question. So the AfD party, of course, is it really winning seats more on the eastern part of Germany? Being, of course, traditionally speaking, of course, this part of Germany has been less tolerant, as people do think it is the case. Or is it because a lot of people who are not voting historically in Germany all of a sudden start voting, and then a number of people who come forward who never voted now vote for AfD? How do you understand the issue? Is the issue Germany-wide or only the eastern part of Germany?
The issue is, of course, Germany-wide, because the refugee crisis is a phenomenon which is a German-wide phenomenon. But, of course, in the eastern part there is more potential for this, because the people are not aware of Islam and of Muslims. But you know, the AfD is running for seats in all parts of Germany, and what we have learned is that if we are able to have dialogues with these members, because in the in the very recent past, our speaker of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat in Germany had the opportunity to have an interview along with the speaker of the AfD party, and it was published in a very famous magazine, newspaper magazine of Germany. And there it was very clear that there are a lot of misunderstandings within the AfD party also, and there are many controversial issues between the in between the party. It's not that the party all in all is against Islam. There are streamings, and there are people in the party who are very liberal to the idea of Muslims in Germany and Islam as being part of Germany. But of course, the party is trying to get power and to get seats, and maybe today it's the Islam which is the main issue for this party, and tomorrow it will be in another issue. But because of the refugee crisis, it's a very lively issue which can be used for their political interests.
Hasnat, thank you very much. We actually have one of the party leaders, the whip, the chief whip, I believe, of the AfD party, Alternative for Deutschland, an interview with him. So let's go to that interview now. It's in German, but there's subtitles. So let's get an insight from within the party itself.
Der Muslim sagt, okay, der Islam gehört nicht zu Deutschland, entsteht eine Spaltung der Gesellschaft und die Harmonie ist gestört. Wie würden Sie dem entgegnen?
Das Gegenteil ist der Fall. In dem Moment, wo also der ganze Integrationsprozess noch vor uns steht, indem ich jetzt klar definiere, welche Voraussetzungen Muslime erfüllen müssen, um Deutsche zu werden, indem ich da auch von vornherein aufkläre, was für Anforderungen erfüllt werden müssen, vermeide ich eben gerade irgendwelche Irrwege. Ja? Ich vermeide eben den Glauben, man braucht sich gar nicht groß ändern. Hier in Deutschland würde alles akzeptiert werden. Das ist mitnichten der Fall. Jedenfalls im Osten gilt das definitiv nicht. Und ich glaube, daran wird sich auch in den nächsten 10, 20 Jahren nichts ändern. Aufgrund einfach mal der Quantität der Zuwanderung, die wir momentan haben. Ja? Wird der identitäre Aspekt unserer Gesellschaft eine verstärkte Rolle spielen.
Sicher, und zur letzten Frage, wie groß ist Ihrer Meinung nach dann tatsächlich die Kluft zwischen den muslimischen Deutschen und den restlichen Deutschen, und was kann man tun, damit diese Kluft wirklich geringer wird?
Na, das ist in der Tat eine gewaltige kulturelle und auch religiös bedingte Kluft. Ne? Ja, am Ende ist es die Anpassung an die deutsche Leitkultur, die aus meiner Sicht möglich ist. Die ist einem Muslim möglich. Das zeigen auch jede Menge Muslime, die hier in Deutschland schon wohnen und leben und die sich unserer Leitkultur angepasst haben. Das gibt es ja ohne Zweifel. Und dieser Weg, der muss erfolgreich weiter beschritten werden. Und dazu ist es wichtig, auch klare Anforderungen zu formulieren und sich nicht eben verdruckst dieser Sache zu nähern, weil man sich nicht traut, Wahrheiten auszusprechen oder Positionen zu beziehen, die aber wichtig sind, damit so eine Integration gelingen kann.
Diejenigen, die es vielleicht nicht verstanden haben, ich weiß, es ist schwierig, eine kurze Definition der Leitkultur.
Die Leitkultur in Deutschland ist deutsch. Sie besteht nicht nur aus der freiheitlich-demokratischen Grundordnung, nicht nur aus dem Grundgesetz, sie besteht in unserem Rollenverständnis, sie besteht in unseren Traditionen, unserer Lebensweise, aus unseren Vereinen, aus der Feuerwehr, aus dem Mittagessen. All diesen kleinen Aspekten unseres Lebens besteht die Leitkultur. Das heißt nicht, dass jemand, der hierher kommt, zwangsläufig nur noch deutsche Speisen essen muss. Natürlich kann er in einzelnen Teilbereichen weiterhin Aspekte aus seiner Herkunftskultur beibehalten, aber insgesamt muss ein Migrant, der dauerhaft in Deutschland leben möchte, der hier alt werden möchte, seine Herkunftskultur ablegen und die deutsche Leitkultur annehmen. Das ist wichtig.
So Hasnat, can you hear us there?
Yes, I can hear you.
So what I think the central thrust of what Mr. Mullah was talking about there was that what we call cultural integration, but he was saying that there is and you'll know the German word, but there's a German culture. He said that some Muslims have done it very successfully in the past. That's what needs to happen now. Just a question though, I mean, looking at the recent party conference, and they had a manifesto which banned the azan, they banned the minaret, and they also, I believe, banned the burka and the wearing of the burka. Is that what German culture requires, the removal of minarets and the prohibition of the azan? What do you think?
Of course not. this discussion about the German Leitkultur or the German culture, this is a discussion which is very bizarre, and it's grounded on very false, in a false debate. And because these are phrases and these are arguments which have a very negative consequence, and these issues and these phrases are in part also responsible for the reactions which then comes from the extremist parts of Muslims, who then feel that it's a very big issue, and they are in a way against the Islam, and so very much extremist streamings are lied on that. I think that it's not the German culture. The German culture does not say that there shouldn't be any other culture, any other religion in Germany. We have a clear mindset of the German people that all kind of religions are part of Germany, and the German constitution says that every person who lives in Germany can have his religion, his culture. He's not forced to have German culture, whatever it is, because there is no such definition of a German culture. In Germany, the German people, the German native people themselves have many different traditions. There are many regional differences when you go to northern part of Germany and when you go to the southern part of Germany. There are sometimes you cannot understand a person who lives in the southern part of Germany cannot understand what the person in the northern part of Germany is saying. And I think this is a very bizarre and a very false debate, because the country is very open and the German culture is very open. There is no such German culture which can prohibit or which can say that there is no space for other traditions or other cultures, because I think we are living in the 21st century, and we are living in a society where many people from many different countries, many different backgrounds are forming the culture, are forming the society, and are playing a very vital and lively role in the development of the society. So these are only arguments for the sake of argument, and for the sake of votes, and for the sake of having fear in parts of the society. And I think we have to be very cool, and we have to be very also very intensively. We should take our part, that we should answer to these questions, and we should come forward and show what Muslims, and especially what many Muslims from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, for example, are doing for the sake of the German society.
Thank you very much, Hasnat. These are topics, particularly in Germany, that we can talk about for much longer. But I think now, Brother Farooq, if perhaps because this parallels perhaps to some extent in the USA, it seems. And I know we've got a guest from the USA, but before we go there, perhaps if we have another look at some of the research, and then we can bring in Horace.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have some interesting research here, which has been done by Frederick Abbott Steifang. I hope I do pronounce correctly. It's German, from Berlin Forum. It's about 400-page long document with a lot of different countries' reports, as well as the good thing about this particular document is, in fact, it's been written by several academics in Europe, as well as some of the top politicians. And I'm going to go straight, if you can see my screen perhaps, that's the title page, Right-Wing Extremism in Europe. And I'll go straight to the comment made by Mr. Schulz, who's the President of European Parliament, Martin Schulz. He says, all of these European Union accomplishments frustrate the designs of extremists and populists on the radical right. Nonetheless, there is still a great deal of mistrust on the continent. There are politicians, clever people, and well-educated, intellectually sophisticated elements in our societies that consciously pursue a right-wing agenda. Their carefully planned and targeted public pronouncements reflect xenophobic and indeed often racist values. Part of their political vision features the exclusion of those who look, behave, and worship differently. But we shouldn't delude ourselves. There are forces in Europe that seek to fuel hatred for minorities because they stand to benefit from that hatred politically. I think it's a very nice way he's put down, and again, a man of that status has said this. Clearly takes us to the next question, whether the governments in the world are understanding the message or not. If you go straight to the US perhaps and speak to Brother Horace Zafar, maybe?
Zafar, yeah.
Okay.
And I think, Brother Horace, if you can you hear us there?
Yeah, yes I can indeed. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. So you will have heard Brother Farooq just talking there about there's a risk of right-wing elements looking to alienate and to isolate minorities and to blame them for problems. Is this a problem which you face in the USA?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the sentiment expressed by Martin Schultz is spot on. You know, there's a great deal of mistrust, as he mentioned, is consciously being pursued as part of a right-wing agenda. We have seen that growing here in the United States, especially over the past few years. You know, these days, obviously, what's occupying the headlines is the advent of Mr. Donald Trump, who is on his way to becoming the nominee for the Republican Party. And as this Republican Party moves to unite behind him, polls indicate that he and Hillary Clinton are in a dead heat for the general election. So that means there's a real chance that Donald Trump may become the next president of the United States. And with regards to Muslims, he has recently said that the ban on Muslims was only a suggestion, would only be temporary, but he still wants a ban on nearly all Muslims entering the U.S. So this fans the flames of ignorance that still prevail about Islam and Muslims in the U.S. Now, we're fortunate in the U.S. that there's much more integration between people of different backgrounds here compared to Europe. And we haven't had to deal with ghettoizations that you've seen in Europe or bans on burkas, mosques, minarets, etc., that Europe is still steeped in. However, the ignorance is still here, and it's growing, and it preys on the fears that many Americans have regarding the safety of their country and what Muslims truly believe.
Okay, Horace, thank you very much. So we're going to come back to you in just a moment. We have some vox pops from the street in the USA. So let's go there now and find out what some of the American people think about these topics.
Not everybody understands Islam as a religion. You know, that just because of the media, what's happening, like it's always such, like it always like goes together with violence, let's say. Yeah, but that's not, of course, that's not really true. I mean, it's a religion.
This is the United States. I mean, everybody lives here. You know, Chinese, blacks, whites, all different, you know, all different types of cultures, different religions. We all here in one. And I think that America should, you know, stand up and follow what they believe in.
No matter where you're from, no matter what religion you are, everybody should get along. Like me being a Mexican American, obviously we also face discrimination against. And that's I feel like that's what makes it relatable for me and Islams and anybody in this world that gets discriminated against, especially by this country and the people who are running it. They shouldn't be so ignorant.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Haris. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear us? Assalamu alaikum. Right, quick question now then, of course. You've discussed Donald Trump. Now, there's a debate in that country at the moment. Who's going to win the election? Probably that's what you guys discuss about almost every day. The question about Donald Trump's viewpoint about Muslims, I would have thought that really has triggered the public debate in the US. Is it a good thing or a bad thing, do you think? For an Ahmadi Muslim, for example, of course, gives you a chance to talk about Ahmadi and true Islam.
Well, I mean, the approach that's always taken by the Ahmadi Muslim community is irrespective of what is being brought up in mainstream discussion, we can still find the opportunity to elucidate the true teachings of Islam, to educate people. So there's a silver lining that come out of any atrocity. So it's neither good nor bad. We still have the opportunity and the obligation to educate. Because there's a great deal of ignorance about Islam in the United States. The Pew Research in 2014 said that 60% of Americans simply don't know a Muslim. And when this ignorance is then combined with stories of terrorists who are Muslim committing some of the worst acts imaginable, it does lead individuals to wonder why Muslims are so violent. And so that's why it creates this opportunity for us to answer. And that's why we believe this new campaign we've launched, the True Islam and the Extremists, is so vital, that It presents a single unified platform for all Americans, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, to join together to say, here's what we believe can protect our national security and keep people away from the path of extremists. So there is that opportunity for that discussion, and we do see people they're taking this message very openly, and that can lead to better discourse.
Brother Harris, so when you mentioned the comments of Donald Trump of having an embargo on preventing Muslims entering the USA, and you mentioned that he's withdrawn from that and that he stated it was just a suggestion. But just looking at that, what does that indicate about American politics and about how Americans or some Americans are thinking? And to what extent do Americans view Islam as a whole and Muslims in general as a threat to national security?
That's a great question. And the U.S. is a bit divided on this. Across the political parties, we have seen that those that are more right-wing, more conservative, are a greater percentage of agreeing with that sentiment of barring Muslims, at least temporarily, from entering the U.S., with exceptions like American citizens. 54% of the Republican Party polled as agreeing with that, a lot less of the independents and Democrats. So what this indicates is that there are people that still have their underlying fear is the safety of their country. And they're concerned when they see things happening in different parts of the world that conflate Islam with terrorism. And so that's why the politics becomes important, is because leaders have become opportunistic and exploit that fear for their own political gain by joining this chorus of distrusting Muslims. And so what we're trying to get across is the average American, because we know what's happening in politics. That's what can be described as deliberate ignorance. They know Muslims continue to be outspoken, but they're not being heard. And
Exactly. We'll come back to you in a few moments again. We're going to ask a question to Brother Khalil Yusuf. He's been here for a while now, and I think it's your turn to answer some questions now. Khalil Sahab, we're discussing about the issues in Europe as was in the US, and clearly seems like the last few years have been pretty difficult for anyone who really understands what peace actually means, what Islam truly teaches. What is a challenge now for a normal Muslim who's living in the West to respond to these problems? They also get agitated, of course, they get to an extent worried about what's happening. What is the best response to these problems?
Good question. Probably not a short answer either, but let me just try and summarize that. I mean, first of all, the great work that the US Jamaat is doing with the True Islam campaign is a really good example of how you can rebalance the narrative in which people accuse Islam of being the cause of all sorts of wars and terrorism, extremism, and generally everything else that's going on. It's an 11-point campaign, and I think that I would encourage people to go onto the True Islam website and just have a look at that. So that's a really good way of answering some of the main points that are against Islam. But equally, I think Muslims have got to not just talk about what Islam really means, but they have to practice it as well. And when Muslims or other people in society have challenges or problems with the way things work, the way to deal with that is not through violence and disorder, but actually through the political system. So, AFD, we might not agree with their views, and I don't agree with their views, but actually they're going about things in the right way, and Trump is going about things in the right way by at least engaging in a political process rather than an extreme process. So I'll finish the point because I know that that's going to strike you. So really what people should be doing, in my view, including Muslims and others, is engaging in that political process. And how do you do that? Well, the Holy Quran is actually quite clear on this point, and I think that it is chapter 4, verse 59, but somebody might tweet in and tell me if that isn't right. But that talks about the responsibilities of individuals and how they go about exercising their vote or exercising a trust. And what it says is that when you give somebody a trust, you should do it because they deserve it. And you should do that on the principles of justice and honesty, looking at what the interests of the nation are as a whole. So when Donald Trump or when FDA or when others put forward views that are abhorrent and that divide society, that are against Muslims or Mexicans or Jews or Christians. What people should do is they should exercise their vote for the good of the nation in a responsible way. So what's in the Holy Quran is not just a message for Muslims, in my view, that's a message for everybody. And that's the way that you deal with these issues.
We hear the point you're raising, but isn't that a huge problem now? Of course, in the history of Europe, for instance, and hatred, once you allow these words to come out and people being in the name of freedom of speech, for example, it goes way beyond the limits. Of course, the history of Europe tells us even some laws have been enacted where you can't even do, in some areas, make a free speech if you like. Certainly, those areas are understandable. Then doesn't that really mean to protect some of the values, it's good to snub these people and nip them in the bud?
Look, there's a careful balance to be drawn. You know, Islam is actually very pro-free expression, and it's important that people are entitled to be able to express their views. What we don't want to do is to completely suppress them. But equally, governments should legislate against that sort of speech which is designed to cause harm. And, you know, there's a difference between speech which you and I might not like, but which is designed to try and improve truth, to try or to bring forward truth and honesty, or to try and improve democracy, and that which is there just to create hate or just to denigrate people for the sake of it. I think that should be unlawful. But I don't think necessarily people's views that are somewhat unpalatable should be banned. Look, the Promised Messiah, alayhi salam, spoke a lot about religions. He didn't agree with the views of other religions. Would you expect that he should be banned from sharing those views? No. But he should express those views, and us, you know, in the following the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teachings, should also be allowed to express our views. But we should do it in a way that is respectful and appropriate.
So talking about rights, the sort of human rights, freedoms topic, a big issue in Europe is about women wearing the burka or the niqab, and this is another thing that we want to talk about today. And here in the UK, we don't have bans on burqa or these things. And come in just a moment to Germany and the USA, but just to start off from a legal perspective, because your background, Khalil, is legal as well, isn't it? So, and just to give you a quote from the European Court, and because we have the context of burqa bans in Europe, and there's the issue of, is it a violation of human rights? And somebody took it to the court in Europe, and it was a young woman, and she said, well, I can't effectively educate myself and participate in society because I want to wear a burqa, and I don't just want to wear hijab, but I want to cover my face, but the burqa ban stops me. And this is what the European Court said in response. They said they could understand the view that individuals might not wish to see, in places open to all, practices or attitudes which would fundamentally call into the question the possibility of open interpersonal relationships. So in a sense, is Europe right, or are some of those European countries right? Is France right? Is Holland right? Does the burqa stop social interaction within Europe? What do you think?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't stop social interaction, and let me explain why. The timing actually of this is great because we've already had a burqa ban in France, minaret bans, and this kind of, and Belgium as well. So that gives us a history upon which to look at, which you probably didn't have when France imposed the burqa ban at its time. And what it tells us, what history tells us, is that nothing at all has been achieved from any of these bans. Things are not any better in any way, shape or form. So, well, what's the point of doing it is the starting point. And we can have a good discussion now about human rights and about the rights of women to have free choice, because those are the principles and the legal systems that we have in Europe. But to some degree, I don't want to go into that discussion because those arguments are well rehearsed. Let me just talk about this from an economic perspective, if you don't mind. Look, let me give you the example of Ahmadi Muslim women. Ahmadi Muslim women are highly educated. They are great mothers, they're great homemakers, but also they're teachers and scientists and doctors and all sorts of other professionals. They cover themselves, they dress modestly, they go out and they work in society and contribute to the economy. Now, if you prevent Ahmadi Muslim women and others from going out into society by saying, well, you cannot dress how you want to dress, then what do? you harm society by taking away a loyal workforce that can contribute positively to the economy, because now you're forcing those women to choose between their religious beliefs, which are not interfering in their everyday life or in the life of anybody else, and contributing positively to society, because loyalty to one's nation is also part of the Islamic faith. So to force women to, against their will and without consulting them, to wear what you want them to wear or to remove their headscarf isn't just a human rights issue. Actually, it's an economic issue too, which is a decision that I think absolutely shouldn't be taken.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier, Farooq, that this is an issue that Germany are looking at now. So how about we go back to Hasnat and ask him his views on some of this as well. So Hasnat, can you hear us there? Are you with us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good, thank you. So Farooq mentioned earlier that this was one of the issues that the AFD had agreed in their manifesto in early May, that it would be a step forward in the right direction to have a ban on the wearing of burqas, the full Islamic face veil within Germany. What's the latest on that within Germany?
Well, the scarf and burqa debate is kind of not very much currently now discussed in Germany. It was a few years ago, where there were many opinions that it should not be allowed that Muslim teachers or other Muslim women who work in society should wear scarf and burqa and so on. But now it's there was a decision by the German High Court, and which allowed in some federal countries of Germany, in some federal states, that it's allowed, and it's confirmed with the German constitution that Muslim women should be allowed to teach in schools with wearing the scarf. And I think now it's not a big issue in Germany nowadays. Maybe it will be when AfD is trying to force this issue in the future. But I think it's not a big issue now.
So if I can ask you, and just to give you there's different views on this, as you'll be aware, of course. But it was recently discussed in Holland, and Holland has brought in, to some extent, a limited ban on burqas in Holland. One of the arguments that was given on a Politico article on a website called Politico, and the title is "The Dutch Debate Burqa and Ban It." This is in 2015. And one of the ways in which it was described is that women who are forced by husbands or fathers to wear what some call, in their words, a walking coffin that demeans their dignity, are in no position to refuse, the argument goes, unless they'll be beaten or punished, and a decision made by the government relieves them of the responsibility of having to wear the burqa. And so in this way it is giving rights to women, and it's emancipating women. What are your thoughts from a German perspective?
Well, I think it's just the way around. There are many Muslim women who are being stigmatized because of this issue, because they are willingly and with the freedom they want to cover their head with scarves, and it's a kind of dignity for themselves to wear the scarf, and it's against the dignity of women to force them to not wear the scarf. It's just the way around. Of course, we should make clear, and the women who are wearing scarf are making clear in German society that it's not because they are being forced from family or from other sides. It's their own decision, and we should respect, also in German culture, also in the other European countries, we should respect this decision of women that they are wearing scarves because they find that it's part of their identity, it's part of their religion, it's part of their dignity, and it's very unlawful to force them that they should not wear it when they are going around outside or in schools or in other institutions.
Thank you very much, Brother Hasanath. We have to go now to the US, back to Haris Zafar. Assalamu alaikum, Haris, can you hear us? Right, just a few more minutes left in the show. A quick question towards the end now. What is the reason you think is that now in the US the politics is very much around the religious debate rather than the real political issues or economic issues the country faces?
Well, it's really the issue of scapegoating. Like I mentioned before, there's a great deal of ignorance already. When you combine that with some people who hear from the religious leaders that Islam is a root cause of instability in our country, and that Islam is an evil religion, and that's this pettiness of religious competition, then political parties attack Islam really for two reasons. One, they focus on this because they're opportunistic, and they're attempting to tap into a fear that already exists, which once you exploit, you can push for your own agenda. And number two, they don't really have any good ideas on how to fix the real issues of the country or the world. So it's easy to choose a scapegoat. And this is where leadership matters. And we've seen this within our community with the Khalifa of Islam, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmed, as providing this role model of leadership, which is so necessary to bring people back to a sense of unity to work together for a noble cause, as opposed to divide and conquer as a way to at least distract people from what the real issues are. So that seems to be at the heart of why there's this focus on things that aren't really causing the issues. There are scores and scores more people who are dying at the hands of gun violence than Muslim violence. And so it's a distraction really more than anything else.
And Horace, looking at this, the issue of, because it's a very live issue at the moment in the USA, the issue of Donald Trump, and also around the world, it's a very hot issue, so to speak. There have been some comments from Muslims around the world who are actually Muslims in power, and they've interestingly spoken out against Donald Trump. And I want to run some of these by you and see your thoughts on them. So from the Saudi perspective, traditionally a very strong ally of the USA and also the UK as well, the Saudi prince, Turk Al Faisal, who himself is a graduate of Georgetown University, said the following. He said, "For the life of me, I cannot believe that a country like the United States can afford to have someone as president who simply says these people are not going to be allowed to come to the United States." So this was his comment. And then you also have the London mayor who's just been elected, Sadiq Khan, and he made comments directly opposing Donald Trump. So you have Muslim power holders around the world who are very actively speaking out against Donald Trump. What about Muslims within America? How were they responding to Donald Trump?
Some have been very similar to what the new London Mayor Sadiq Khan, as well as the Saudi prince that you had mentioned, and the way they've been speaking. A lot have been very harsh in their rhetoric, much like even the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But what we've seen is that has more than anything galvanized the base of Donald Trump. Because it makes them it breeds this victimology feeling, and so it actually pulls them together and it gives them strength. So what we've been trying to do, and you've seen a lot of Muslims here in the United States, they do take that that type of approach. They talk about how Muslims are going to come out and vote. So it becomes this war. We're going to vote against you to keep you out of office, and that again galvanizes his base. So our approach, other Muslims, including the Ahmadi Muslim community, has been less about poking people in the eye and trying to engage in this battle, and more of calling people towards dialogue, because then that's how you defeat ignorance. Clearly, Mr. Trump has not read the Quran that I sent him for Christmas in a personal capacity as a gift. But those are the type of things that I think will help. We still invite Mr. Trump to reconsider his words and learn more about what Islam stands for, and which is why we're trying to find opportunities to reach the American population, to teach them how Islam is diametrically opposed to the hateful ideology of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and et cetera. I think that's really going to be the key to winning people, by pulling them in through academics and by an intellectual discussion that touches their hearts, as opposed to challenging and showing a show of force and strength.
Okay, thank you very much, Horace, for your views on that. Let's now go, Brother Farooq. You were mentioning that the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has given some guidance on some of these points. What's been said?
Right, Jonathan, I think we're very lucky to have, every time we have a problem in the world, we always get the solution pretty much there, ready for us. Hazur is on his tour to Scandinavian countries. Now, at the moment he's in Sweden, where in his speech, there's a lot of things he's said, pretty much contemporary issues he's addressed in different ways, and talked to people of note there. In his address in Sweden recently, Hazur said, only a week ago, that is, absorbing so many refugees is a very delicate issue and must be handled with extreme caution and care. Because if there is any resentment on the part of the local people, it could lead to an extremely dangerous chain reaction. The local citizens could become hostile to the refugees, and in turn, this could lead to the marginalization of the immigrant population, and that sense of isolation could leave some refugees vulnerable and radicalization by extremists. So Hazur's messages of caution at both ends, that the government should also have policies where, in fact, they should be fair enough. Also, there's a danger that some people coming into Europe could also have already been radicalized.
So let's go to Germany on this, because it's very interesting that a Muslim leader would be calling to caution to some extent, and tell me if I'm misreading this, and let's ask Asnad, to what extent is Germany, how can Germany best follow this approach, looking not only at issues of Islam within German politics, but also perhaps, if I could direct you towards the issue of the open door policy, so-called, within Germany. Is it sustainable, or does it need to change? And what's the best way forward for Germany?
I think we may have lost him.
He may not be there. That's not a problem. That's fine. What do you think, Khalil, about that?
What's your question?
So, moving forwards, how do we deal with the issues of integration within the UK? Yeah. Germany has these issues. We've mentioned the Cologne attacks. We've mentioned criticism that Angela Merkel's received for having allowed too many suggested, arguably allowed too many refugees into the country. And we also have the guidance from the Khalifa that there needs to be moderation and a call for caution against radicalisation. So what are the steps for the UK?
So the question's about integration. From an Islamic perspective, we believe that loyalty to one's nation is part of faith. But what does that mean at its lowest common denominator? Well, what it actually means is that as a starting point, there's no duplicitousness in how you behave. You have to be completely open and transparent and honest and look for the best interests of the nation. And there are two things that are required. One on the part of those that have come newly to a country, and two on the part of those that are accepting those people into their country. And I'll just touch on those very quickly because I know that we're short on time. The responsibility of those that come into a country is first to adopt that country as if it were their own, and to treat it with the affection and the respect that you would for something that belongs to you. So that means being loyal to the country that you're in, learning the language, trying to integrate in a way that you balance your interests and those of the country in which you're in. And on the receiving end, it's important for people to be open-minded as well to immigrants, to allow them the opportunity to be able to integrate well in society. And finally, in order to establish peace, what needs to happen is that individuals should look for the interests of others, look to secure the interests of others. And if we all focus on securing the interests of others, our own interests are intrinsically then fulfilled. So that, in my view, is the way to integrate well and to have much better peace than we're having at the moment.
Thank you very much, Khalil. So I think we'd love to go to yes in Germany, but I think we don't have time. So let's finish off with a tweet. I've seen there's a tweet that we wanted to read out.
Nasir Ahmed Sahib said, refugees must be loyal towards the adopted country, your point. Hazur Anwar said in Sweden, this can benefit. So clearly that's the message. Whoever's coming to these countries also must accept these countries as their own countries and become loyal.
It's very interesting again to see a Muslim leader not only essentially criticising the West, but also teaching Muslims themselves about duties of loyalty and integration. Quite refreshing, I think. Okay, well, thank you very much, Khalil Yusuf, for joining us in the studio on behalf of myself and Farooq, and also to Haris Zafar and to Hasnat Ahmed for joining us on the show. And please do tune in next time to Press Point in a month's time, and do continue to send in the tweets and let us know your views after the end of the show, so we can hear it from your side as well. Okay, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.
Has launched the campaign to try and counter the extremists.
Now speaking out to denounce terror and extremism.
30,000 people formed a human chain in the south this afternoon in the name of peace.
We're asking if religious intolerance is on the rise.
We believe that religious freedom is a fundamental human right.
Giving a message that Islam is a religion of peace.
We must all endeavor to spread love and a sense of community.